The next two gentlemen that are going to come up are legal chief of staff. I've written a little bit about this over the last couple of months. It seems to me that as the role of the general counsel continues to evolve and expand and more responsibilities are put on the general counsel, where does the general counsel go to run the law department? Right? The GC used to run, the legal and the law department. It's become too big a job now. So I'm seeing this evolving role, the way I saw the evolving role of the chief innovation officer. I'm beginning to see the evolving role of the legal chief of staff that plays an interesting in-between, sometimes more leadership, sometimes more strategic. I sense that the legal chief of staff may be the great accelerator for legal operations. If legal operations does not necessarily have a seat at the table, the legal chief of staff does have a seat at the table, works with the GC, supports the GC every single day, is sometimes in those board meetings, preparing for those board meetings, and has a real voice where legal ops may or may not. So as we think of legal ops having a lot of responsibility, and they do, buying technology, implementing technology, I'm beginning to sense a new role. And so if you would, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So if you'd introduce yourself, who are you and where are you? Who are you and where are you? And then we'll just have this back and forth for a couple of minutes on how you see the role evolving. What is your role? How do you see it evolving? How far on or off is my vision of the future? Alex.
Sure. I'm Alex Jonas. I'm the head of legal operations at Autodesk. I was brought into the company as the head of legal operations, and since then, a lot of chief of staff responsibilities have been getting added to my plate, and now I'm acting in that role in addition to my head of legal operations role there.
And what are some of the responsibilities of a chief of staff? Just kind of roll that up for us for a bit.
Okay, thought we were going there with the next question. I would say that a lot of my work as a chief of staff is focused in two areas. The first is helping with the effectiveness of the general counsel's staff. So I actually do a lot more work for him and his staff in their interactions than I do for him individually. And a really cool dimension that's emerged at Autodesk, which is my participation in a network of chiefs of staff to all of the CEO's direct reports and to the CEO himself. And we've been kind of positioned as this connective tissue that exists below the C-staff level as kind of doers and facilitators.
And where were you before Autodesk?
I was at Google in legal operations for about 4 years.
Fantastic.
Hello again. My name continues to be Eduardo Ruiz. And I guess that at this point in time...
Some things never change.
Yeah, you're right. I guess at some time many of you may be thinking you are enough from me, but anyway, bear with me for a few minutes. So I think your view, David, on the chief of staff role is spot on, at least from my experience. Something that maybe is different in our case from many other cases is that our general counsel decided to split and separate the legal operations role and the chief of staff role some years ago, and the reason for that is because in the past, since at that point in time, more so, the operations thing was more kind of making sure that we had the financial discipline that we didn't have. It was kind of a bad cop role, and it created some tensions with the DGCs, which then kind of got in the way of that person being effective as chief of staff and pushing forward the initiatives that we wanted to push forward. So there was a decision made there to split the two roles and have legal operations doing the financial thing, and now much more of a technological and innovation thing, and chief of staff, preferably with a legal background, doing kind of the coordination role with the DGCs. And actually, the way I see my role is making sure that the general counsel spends his time on things he should be spending his time on, and I kind of help with everything else.
How do you make that decision? How much time do you now spend with legal operations and with technology, and what percentage of your day is informing the general counsel about investments that he or she might want to really be looking at? In other words, roads are leading up through you now into the GC to get things bought, purchased, implemented, et cetera. What percentage of your day looks like that?
So actually, legal ops reports directly to the GC. So they have kind of the direct communication there. And I work very closely together on a daily basis with the legal ops team as well and with the legal ops lead. So it's kind of a team effort, and we spend much time together. And because obviously all of the initiatives on the legal ops space need to be coordinated with the strategic initiatives of the legal team as a whole. So that's kind of the way it works. And I'd say I spend probably 50% of my time working directly with the general counsel, and maybe 50% of my time, working with the DGCs and making sure they understand what we're trying to do and helping them be successful there.
Yeah. Alex?
Uh,
Percentage of
Anchor
time
me on the
with legal
question.
ops today, percentage of the time with the GC today. And you and I disagree here, right? So we can do that disagreement right now. You don't see the vision the way I do. You can just share where you think that may.
Yeah, I always feel like anytime I have to talk about this topic, I need to go back to an article that the chief of staff to the CEO at Autodesk wrote that's now out in the world on LinkedIn, that I think I'm a big framework thinker. I need everything to be in a framework, and I think he put this role in a really nice framework. He talked about 3 what he calls orientations of the role, and the first is to the principal, which in our case would be the general counsel, him or herself. The second orientation is to the leadership team. So this would be the general counsel and that person's staff, their reports. And then the third orientation is to the organization. And he talks about this in the article, the role of to the organization as being sort of a COO in sheep's clothing, is what he calls it. Well, that's exactly how I consider the role of the head of legal operations to be, a sort of COO for the legal department. So, if you're a believer in that framework, then legal operations is sort of squarely within the wheelhouse of the chief of staff in that third orientation. I think what's interesting to think about is the way that people sometimes do or don't get there, which is a lot of people in a chief of staff role, I think, start in orientation 1 and move outward in sort of concentric circles to do more with the leadership team as a whole and then do more with the organization as a whole. My personal experience has been exactly the opposite. I was brought in sort of the outer circle to do more for the organization, and now have been sort of working in with the leadership team and with the general counsel. So that's kind of how I kind of see the world in this topic. But I'd say, percentage of time, probably also close to 50-50. The problem for me is that measures of success are more on the legal operations side than on the working with the leadership team side, although that's a very demanding and time-consuming job. So.
See, what's interesting to me is the business savvy that you both have. You've got not so much the legal savvy as much as you've got the business savvy, the financial savvy, and the tech savvy, and that now becomes a skill set and an aptitude and an experiential knowledge that the GC has access to that he or she didn't have before. Comment on that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, well, again, in my case, I do have the legal background. I do have business background, but I have never worked on the business side of things. But anyway, to your point, the way it was for us, the amount of the degree, I should say, the GC leans on the legal operations team for the entire organization to be successful cannot be overstated. That the legal operations team is extremely important to kind of build the backbone of what we need to have, again, in terms of financial discipline, but also in terms of solutions and technology and the like. So they are the key enablers of everything else happening around. Whereas my role is more kind of making sure that, when the GC says, here's the direction we want to go, actually I work with the rest of his leadership team to make sure that we are actually making progress there and we keep on track.
Alex?
Yeah, and I think, to the point about my journey being very different, I'm an MBA by background, not a JD. I've been at Autodesk for 1.5 years, so I haven't had the decades of building a very close-knit relationship with the general counsel that Eva, who unfortunately couldn't be here, had. And I don't know how long you've been working in that role, but I am bringing that operational business mindset to the table, and then again, sort of working inward on building that trust and working as an extension of the general counsel, which is again sort of the opposite experience, I think.
We have 1.5 minutes left. Going back to silos before, how much of what you do today do you think might be breaking down silos?
I'd say a significant part. And it's funny because collaboration is kind of the name of the game today in this session. Collaboration has been the name of the game in our organization for the last at least 2 years. And we do as much as we can to escape from working in silos. It's always a challenge, and people tend to be kind of too much dragged by the day-to-day needs of what they need to do. But we try to do as much as we can to make sure that they reach out to others and so on and so forth. So a great part of the role is making sure that each of the DGCs and their organizations and their teams understand what the others are doing and what the others need, so that you can create those opportunities for collaboration.
Yeah, Alex.
And I would say mine actually not much, but I think the general counsel and his staff are working a lot on that topic. I'm not personally working on that topic, but what I'm working on is helping them work on that topic. You know, coming up with ways to facilitate the conversation. I mean, a lot of my work is helping with meeting facilitation, you know, structuring conversations in the right way, using frameworks to be able to advance topics and make decisions. That's a lot of what I do. So I don't work on that topic directly so much as I enable the rest of the leadership team to work on that topic together.
Well, thank you for sharing your experience. 6 months from now, when we're in New York, I will report back on how many legal chief of staff I can find out there on in the marketplace. If you've got thoughts on that, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So please email me or email me, and let's set up a conversation. The evolving role of the legal chief of staff, I think we'll see at least 20 or 25 of them within the next 12, 18, 24 months. I think that's going to be a critical role going forward as we look into the future. Guys, thanks very much. Thank you.